If habits have ever felt heavy or impossible for you, today we're talking about building them gently in ways that our brain can hold. Welcome back, guys. I am so excited. Today is Thursday. We're on day 4. We are almost through an entire week of full episodes. This has been such a fun week so far. So, today we are going to talk about building gentle habits. So, building habits is something that we talk about a lot, especially during the first of the year. It can be something where a lot of people just that's their natural thing, right? They want to do better, they want to try harder, they want to set bigger goals. And part of that is having better habits. But for a lot of us as neurodivergents, habits can feel restrictive, habits can feel hard, habits can feel with that all or nothing thinking. Like the second we don't do things right, all of a sudden it's all done and we have to start all over again. So, we are going to talk about building them gently, building them step by step, and also a plan for when it derails because it will. So, I'm Kimberly Cox. I'm your host today. We're going to jump right into Fantastic 15 right now. All right, guys, welcome to Fantastic 15. I am again ridiculously excited to be here. This has been such an amazing journey so far, and it is just getting going. So, talking about habits today. When we do our gratitude, I want you to start thinking of one or two, maybe three if you can do it, habits that you have like picked up along the way that actually really help you, right? And there's all kinds of ways that we can come up with habits that, habits can be good, they can be bad. One of the things that I think when we naturally do things at the same time, right? Like if we get up, go to the bathroom, we make our coffee, and maybe we make our coffee and we take our supplements at the same time because we're right there and they're right together. And we started doing it, and that's just the way that we continue to do it. And it makes it so much easier to do it that way. So, I want you to think of some habits that you have kind of adopted along the way here that actually help you. So, one of mine is definitely my morning time, my quiet time. Um, and I don't always get it, obviously. Sometimes things happen, whatever. But if I have the ability to have it, it definitely gets done. That is one thing that definitely happens. So that is one of mine. I think another one has been doing my everyday dose. Um, I used to be a really big coffee drinker, and everyday dose is like coffee, but it also has functional mushrooms in it and some other things, and it helps my brain wake up in ways that are so much better than just coffee alone. And I can still do all the fun things to it, right? I can have it plain or I can make it as fancy and as frilly and as coffee house like as I want. And being able to make it, it's a very, it's very quick, right? Because it's a powder and it just dissolves in hot water and then you add your stuff and you're done. So I think that that has been one of the habits recently that I have adopted that when I'm out, I can definitely tell the difference. If I were to just have a cup of coffee, I could definitely tell the difference. So, technically not sponsored at this moment by Everyday Dose, but I do love them. And if you would like more information, let me know. So, that is the second habit that I have. And if I had to go with a third, which they're hit and miss at this point after this, but if I had to go with a third, I would say that one of the things that I have learned for myself, and I've talked about this before, is how I used to think that I needed to clean the kitchen at night, before bed. Like that's when I would prefer it to be done. And I've since realized that it actually helps me to jumpstart my day as like the next thing to do after my morning time and after, I get ready for the day and stuff. If I just spend a little bit of time getting the dishes put in the take it either taking the dishes out of the dishwasher, put them in, start them, clean up the counter a little bit, I feel like I've done something productive and it jump starts that snowball. So those are three habits that I am very grateful that I have started doing. And I started doing these before the new year. So, all right, drop those comments, drop those things that you are grateful for, those habits in the comments below. We are going to take some time to do some grounding with our breathing little retro video there. And I will be back on the other side to do some inspiration with you guys. All right, welcome back, welcome back. So, inspiration about habits that can be so difficult because I think that we have high hopes and we expect a lot from ourselves sometimes. And we think, oh, well, other people do this stuff and it's so easy. I think part of the problem is I think a lot of people have been developing habits for years that a lot of us as neurodivergents have really had a hard time developing, period. And I'm going to say this habits are very difficult for neurodivergent individuals because if we fall off of the habit, it feels very difficult to get back on. And I know that a lot of neurotypical people can feel the same way, but I feel like a neurotypical person is a little less rejection sensitive. So, therefore, they're going to be able to kind of maybe get themselves going a little bit faster. I think sometimes neurodivergent people, they're just a little bit more sensitive, and having something like that, where something like that happens and you fall off and you disappoint yourself, it's really difficult when we disappoint ourselves because we can't get away from ourselves. We can't go take some time away from ourselves. We're always with ourselves. So then we have to live with the fact that we've disappointed ourselves. And I think that that can be very, very draining, very, very difficult. So, this is what I want to start this episode, this whole beginning of this thing by saying this, okay? One, I 100% believe that you have everything in you to slowly build habits. And once you start slowly building them, when we build like another like plan for when they don't happen, when you do skip things, if you have a plan for getting back to doing them, then you don't have as much problems because it's not like, okay, like imagine that you're stacking stuff, okay, and you have this big board on the bottom, and maybe you have a a little bit smaller box, and then another box, and then another box, and then another box, and then another box, and it's way over your head, and it's kind of unstable and shaky, and finally it falls over. Well, you can't pick all of that up the same way. It was just stacked. You're going to have to pick a few things up at a time and stack them back up and all of that. So, we can't just jump right back into a routine if we've been steadily adding and adding and adding and then we just like stop. I mean, maybe a day or two you could probably be okay to get back on, but it would still probably be difficult because it would feel like a lot. So, building back up slowly, but it doesn't have to be as slow as you start necessarily, right? Because you still kind of have some muscle memory from that stuff. You still kind of have that like routine in your head. You know what you're supposed to do. So, if you add two or three at a time instead of just one, 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 um, but I really think that that is something that when we take the time to build the plan to get back on, instead of just assuming that we're going to do fine and we're not going to have any problems, because maybe you don't have any problems, but life happens. Kids get sick. Like bad weather happens, power goes out, people stop in unexpectedly, emergencies happen, and when that kind of stuff happens, it can throw you for a loop if you're not ready on the other side for it. So, that is what we're going to be talking about in our rings today. We are going to talk about um, just different types of habits that you can have in the kitchen, because the kitchen is kind of like one of those places where, like, you can have some really good habits, you can have some really bad habits. So we're going to talk about kind of the two categories that happen in the kitchen, and how to maybe combat some of the harder ones and how to actually stick to some of the ones that are going to help you. Alrighty, I appreciate each and every one of you guys. We are moving on to moving our body. All right, let's do some stretches, guys. Arms up over your head and stretch. We're going to lean to the right, lean way over and stretch. Now we're going to lean to the left. All right, and back down. Let's do that one more time. Straight up and then over and over. Alrighty. Let's do some neck rolls. Other way. All right, shoulder shrugs and relax. Shoulder shrugs and relax. Two more times. All right, shake it out, shake it out, shake it out, shake it out. Alrighty, we are headed to fun with food next. All right, welcome to the fun with food segment. So, in the kitchen, when we talk about habits, we have some good habits, we have some bad habits, and we have a couple different areas for habits. I think the first area that we have has to do with eating, and the second habit we have has to do with cleaning. So, all the prep, the cook, and the eating itself, and then the cleanup afterwards. So, I want you to pick maybe one out of each category, okay? And this can be super, super simple. We are not going to start, I'm going to meal prep and I'm going to have my kitchen clean every night and I'm good at like, yeah, we're not going to do all that. All right. We are going to start super simple, small things. Um, there are habits that have made my life easier, and they are things that I am still currently developing and working on. So, for instance, I a lot of times try to either have bottled water, or if we do have to use our tap water on occasion that we run out or whatever, I try to have like a couple of milk jugs of water in the refrigerator at all times, because you just like, I think, especially for kids, but myself included, it's always better to drink water when it's cold. You're gonna want to drink it more when it's cold. The only way I don't mind drinking like room temperature bottled water, but room temperature water from the tap is just no, no, thank you. So I would like to have it cold, and I would like to have it, ready for me to pour into my water bottle so that I can drink. And so one of the habits that I'm trying to get into is making sure that there is a jug, that it's full, that, even if there's this much left and there's a part of my brain that logically says, well, that's still like almost an entire cup, so you could wait until that's gone, but especially at night, if I know that I'm going to be sleeping, other people are going to be sleeping, if I can just fill it up, it'll be getting cold all night long. When I wake up in the morning, it'll be nice and cold and ready to rock, and I'll have it for the whole day, right? And so there's that like kind of battling against what seems logical, right? Because like I don't want to necessarily fill it up and then all of a sudden one of my kids come in and want it and be, a little bit unhappy because they have to have, warmer water because the cold water got mixed with, just regular tap water. But that being said, that is one of the habits. Another habit that I am working on putting into the rotation of things is having snacks that are portioned out, ready to go. Because a lot of times I think we overeat just because we don't want to count out 15 crackers. We don't want, like, our brain is, especially when I'm eating, if I'm eating, it's generally speaking, I'm at that point where I'm already done. And so, because of that, I really need to already have that stuff done for me. And then I can just grab it, even if I'm like, okay, I really kind of need two. Okay, let me grab two, but then I can at least like do the macros and stuff if I want to for two, right? I know what I'm putting in my body versus just mindlessly eating out of the bag or out of the box, right? And then, my kids also have that ability to grab stuff, and I know that they're not taking half the box or more, right? Okay, so those are mine, but there's all kinds, right? We can talk about cleaning, we can talk about like setting up your coffee maker the night before so it goes off so you don't have to think about it in the morning, right? I mean, I know it doesn't take long usually, and especially if you have like a Keurig, that's a whole different story. Then you can do it right then and there. But if you're making like a half a pot or a whole pot or whatever, if you just set it up the night before, if you can do that, and even if you can't, if you can like pour the water in, get everything ready, so all you have to do is stumble into the kitchen and hit the on button, and then you can go do whatever it is you need to go do and come back and it's ready to rock. So that's another one that we can, you can add to the list, right? Supplements, if you take them, do you take them like with something, with food? Do you take them when you're having your coffee? Like what can you stack in that area, right? And then when it comes to like cleaning, um, when do we run a dishwasher? If we have one, do we run it in the morning? Do we run it at night? I love the idea of running it at night and having dishes to take out in the morning and just, do that. That doesn't always happen. Like I said, sometimes it's halfway full and I finish filling it up and I start it, and that's part of my getting going. But that is something that I've picked for myself that works for me. So, what are some tiny habits, right? Nothing huge, nothing like, and the thing of it is little habits add up, right? So if you don't do them, it's not like horrible things are going to happen, right? Like if I don't start, or if I don't set up the coffee maker the night before, I can just set it up the morning of, and do it, and I'm out maybe 10 minutes tops with having to wait for it to brew instead of just hitting it and whatever, right? So, like, that's a thing. But if I do that and then I stack that with something else, like, maybe I do put my water jugs in at night so then I can fill my water bottle up. I can get my hydration started. I can take my supplements while I'm waiting for the coffee and the coffee's probably already done if because we have one that you can set it up and, it'll brew, has a timer on it and stuff. So, that's one thing that we can do like that, and then that saves so much time, and then you're avoiding all of these like mind numbing tiny tasks that just make you want to go no. So let me know what your little tasks are, what your little habits are, and we will start talking about how we're going to gently implement them over in the next 3 sections. All right, welcome back to the Home and Family Ring. Today, we are going to talk about having everyone pick a habit. Okay, let me get a drink. All right, we're going to talk about having everyone pick a habit. So, and I think when everyone's working on them together, at first it might feel a little weird. Your kids might feel a little weird. You might feel a little weird even having to, like, kind of be accountable to your kids in a way, right? Because if you're all doing them together, then that's part of it. My habit is my habit, and then your habit is your habit, and I'm doing mine, and you need to do yours, and vice versa, right? So it's going to feel a little weird probably at first if you're not used to doing that kind of stuff. But once you start to get the hang of it, once it starts to become normal, I promise you, you'll start to feel the support system that you have built in. The people that love and care about you, that live in your home, that want you to do good, that you want them to do good, right? And when you guys are cheering for each other and you're there all the time, right? It's one thing when you have a partner, like I have a lot of online friends that I do different accountability stuff with. And it's fun and it's great and we check in daily and all that kind of stuff, but they're not here. They don't really know what's going on. They don't really know what I'm doing. So having someone that's really in your space, that if you're like, okay, my habit is I'm going to wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning. Well, if they roll over at 7 o'clock and they're like, I still hear mom snoring, you didn't do your thing. You didn't do your habit. So what we do is everybody picks a habit, and it can be the same one if that's how everybody feels, what everybody feels like doing. But I would suggest picking whatever one is going to make sense and is going to make the biggest difference. Okay, I always tell women, if you have not started your own like morning time, right, your own morning routine where you have personal time to yourself, where you can kind of get your mind right, that is the game changer of them all. That is the one. It doesn't require a lot to do it because you can do it with whatever you have and whatever way makes you happy, right? I mean, I know women who do prayer and Bible reading and every morning and devotionals and drink their coffee and kind of get their mind right that way. I know women who meditate. I know women who exercise. I know women who like just consume really positive content in the mornings while, also visualizing and doing that kind of stuff. So it's really up in the air what you do with that morning routine, but that is a game changer. And when I try to teach my kids that it is important for them to have time in the morning when they wake up as well. I think it's important for everybody to get to that space where instead of just like jumping into everybody else's demands and everybody else's to-dos and everybody else's business, we get ourselves right. And then we can decide if that stuff is even important to us, or if it's more like okay, well, you know, a friend of mine is having issues and I feel bad, and I'll let her talk if she wants, but I'm also not going to go like hanging on her words that, I'm if she doesn't come to me and want to talk, then I'm going to leave that as what it is and I'm going to go do my own thing because that's what feels right in the moment, right? Okay. So everybody picks, a habit, and then everybody has like a time frame when they're going to do this habit, right? So if it's a morning routine, it's obviously in the morning. If it's something in your evening routine, it's at night. If it's during a meal, then it's, during that meal. But you have to put a time frame on it so that you have like once that time frame is passed, I mean, yes, you can still do it, but you're not doing it the way you said you did. We're going to do it. It's not building the habit necessarily. Okay. So when we go in and we build like a routine, right? And not a schedule, not like, okay, I'm going to wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning. And then the next thing I do is I'm going to, make coffee and I'm going to be doing this by this time. That's rigid and that's a hard for a lot of us to do. But if we can come around to this, like, okay, I spend as much time as I need to on this thing, and then I jump to that thing, and then I jump to that thing, and I have two more things, and then I'm done with this part of my day. I'm done with my morning. Now I can move on to the next part of my day. And if we get into that habit of doing things in that way, then we don't even really have to think about what we're doing. We kind of go on autopilot with it, which if it's stuff that doesn't really need us to be very present to do it, that can help because we're not going to say, "Oh, I can't do it because I don't can't think to do it. I'm too tired, I'm too frustrated, I'm too upset, I'm too whatever." We're just going to do it. Like we're going to do it because it's the next thing that we do. And that's going to help us because it's going to make us feel successful even when we don't feel successful. So, and then when we can show our kids, like even on days when you're tired or you don't feel good, but you get up and have a cup of tea or have a cup of, hot chocolate or coffee, and you spend some time doing whatever it is that's your thing, and then you leave that and you get yourself ready for the day, and then you start on whatever your tasks are. Like it's easier to get to your tasks if you have your time and you know what you're doing and you know the order, because we naturally have a transition time then. There's not that hard transition of I'm doing whatever I want to now I have to do something. It's okay, this is what I want to do because I know that it's helping me. I know that it's getting me to where I need to be. So I want to do this, and these are the things that I want to do. And then when I'm done with that, we naturally just roll into the next thing. And transitions are another thing that's super hard with neurodivergent people. So when you can kind of help that along, that those habits that you're creating are turning into transition rituals, which will then help you to transition to the next thing, without making it too hard. And you're teaching your kids that when you're teaching them that too. And that's a life skill. Okay, think about how many people I have known. So many people. I worked in a factory at one point, and I had so many friends that would get there like 45 minutes early, and it's like, why are you? And it's like, because I have to sit and have a cup of coffee and a snack and talk to some people. And then I have to go outside and have a cigarette and go to the bathroom and get everything ready and maybe have a second cigarette and then go out to the floor. And they had like a routine once they got to work to get themselves ready to go to work. And I'm like, it's ingenious, really. Like, we naturally do this, but sometimes I think we don't really see it for what it is. So labeling it as, okay, like this is my morning routine, and then after my morning routine, or after my, getting ready for the day, or after my first block of day, we move into the next thing. And it also helps at nighttime to transition us from an evening routine to sleep, because we're going to do so much better sleeping when we know we've done all the things that we need to do. Everything's good. We can like shut our brain off, even though our brains never shut off. Like, let's be honest. But we can like kind of calm our brain down a little bit and say, okay, like now it's time to sleep. And we can actually sleep. And then we wake up and we know, like, okay, this is the routine. And I know that some of you are going to say, but, because I think this all the time, but what about novelty? And that's where I say, this is part of being neurodivergent and thinking ahead. Sometimes we can interchange our habits, okay? So maybe my morning routine is filled with habits which are wake up, go to the bathroom, get a cup of coffee, sit down, watch a video, do some walking, do some, like drink my water. And then at a certain point, I am transitioning into getting ready for the day. So if I know all of those things are habits that go with my like morning routine, I can switch things out. Maybe I can say, okay, I'm going to have a different drink, right? I'm going to have, instead of having coffee, I'm going to have, you know, a protein shake or a smoothie, or I'm going to make a cup of tea or whatever. I can switch out. I always switch out what videos I'm watching. So that is one thing that keeps me going. I can switch out my exercise and I can say, okay, I'm not going to walk today, or I'm going to walk outside today, or I'm going to, like, you can switch up things within that routine that still keep the routine the routine. So that's another good one for cleaning. Like, okay, maybe I'm going to clean something every day, but it doesn't have to be the same thing. And it doesn't have to be, maybe I'm going to clean an area of the bathroom every day, and an area of the kitchen, and an area of the living room. And then I've done 3 different areas in one day, but at the end of the week, all 3 rooms are going to be done, right? So, and then you can switch those up and things. So, that's, you got to get into the habits first, and then once you get into the habits, then you can start switching things up, then you can start changing things up, you can start interchanging stuff to make it more novel so you want to keep doing it. Alrighty, we are going to hop on over to the center ring and go deeper with our habits. So whatever habit you picked for your habits, and it could be your kitchen habits, it could be your habit that you're going to pick with, your family, and you could make all of those the same one, or you can make different ones, but just don't overload yourself with a bunch of new, okay? And I know it's very easy for us to be like, well, it's just like 6 or 7 different like things that take a minute or two. But when we start overloading ourselves with too many, then they start to feel kind of daunting. So if we do 2 or 3, and then once we get those down for a couple of weeks, then we can add some more. And I'm not one of those people who's going to tell you to wait full 6 weeks. I feel like if you're doing them consistently and the next thing feels like it's naturally going to fall into place anyway, then you can do it and that's fine. So, we are going to go deeper with our habits, and I want you to take this is going to be a very short segment because really we've already done a lot of the work, right? We've looked at the habits, we've already been talking about why habits are important, what kind of habits are important, what kinds of things like you build habits into routines and then routines help you transition. Why are the habits that you want to create important? As adults, okay, as kids, uh, teenagers, I think definitely could benefit from this. I think the younger they get, the harder it is for them to fully grasp this. So you might maybe start dabbling with this with them, but I wouldn't expect them to like expect it to click and them to have these really yeah, these really life-shattering answers, right? Um but why are you doing these things? So I can say to myself, like, okay, why do I drink coffee in the morning? I drink coffee in the morning because I like it. I enjoy it because it, kind of wakes my brain up. It starts my day. It gives me something that I enjoy to start my day. It feels like a treat. Like I can give myself all those reasons, right? An even deeper reason why is because it like triggers my brain that like okay, we're officially up, we're officially doing stuff. I feel like a lot of times if I don't have some kind of drink in the morning like that, like I've had energy drinks in the morning and for like went without coffee and I still struggle because my brain associates that cup of coffee with okay, like now the day is really here. And up until then, it's like almost like I could go back to sleep at any moment. Like I could just curl up in my bed and be back to sleep because it's like, okay, are we really doing this or are we not? So that's one of the things that my brain has latched onto. And I can replace it with things because I'm able to drink like my everyday dose. I've had like smoothies and stuff, but it has to be something more fancy than like a can of something because that feels more like what I have in the afternoon. And it's really funny how our brains kind of latch onto certain patterns or certain things, but when we know these things in advance and we know how to trick our brain, like, okay, so if I just pour it into a coffee cup, it's probably going to trick it enough into at least halfway, right? And it has. I don't, yeah, it has. So, but what is your why for some of your stuff, right? Maybe you want to have, like, maybe your kitchen stuff is your big why. I really want for me, like, I would love to have like a snacks, like snack stashes of healthy snacks, right? Of fruits and vegetables that are already ready to go, that I don't have to like take the time to, wash and cut them up and everything. Because a lot of times, if I'm busy and I want something, or my kids need something, and I need to like change gears real fast, we know how hard that is as neurodivergent people. So if it's already ready to go, I can just, okay, pick from something from in those bins and let's go. Um, and I would love to have that kind of stuff and to have like that kind of variety so that I don't go to the bad, to the bad stuff all the time, right? Having a little bit of a treat here and there, there's nothing wrong with. But if the treats are readily available and more tempting than the good food, what do you think you're going to pick? Especially if you're like already hanging on by a thread, right? So I need you to write your why for why you are doing this habit or these habits. And I need you to go deep with it, okay? I always tell people to do the 7 layers of why. I feel like sometimes that feels like a lot when it comes to simple things. But in all honesty, it's not because it still gets to the root of the thing, right? So, like, why do I want to have my morning time? I want to have my morning time because it sets me up for the day. Why do I want to be set up for the day? I want to be set up for the day because I want to make decisions and responses based on calm and logic versus reaction. Why do I want to do that? Because I don't like how I react when I am, not when I'm caught off guard, when I'm nervous, when I don't know the answer. Like, I would rather have a calm nervous system and be able to respond from a calm place, right? And then, like, why don't you like the way you respond? And like, you can just keep going and keep asking yourself why. And you're going to get this really deep, like, rooted statement that's going to like make you go, okay, like this is something that's actually worth doing. And this is why it's hard with kids to go this deep because, a lot of times it's because you told me to do it, or because I don't want my devices taken away, or because and I like, I'm trying to teach my kids right now how when you find the reason why for yourself, it makes doing things so much easier. Versus me saying, okay, you need to clean your room. If they're like, oh, wait a minute, when my room's clean, I can find things. I don't feel stressed out. I can move around. I have space to do stuff. Like, when they can bring those kinds of answers and say, that's what I want to live in, that's why I want to do this, then it makes overcoming some of that stuff a little easier. Not a ton easier, but a little easier. But we're still working on that with them. So, like I said, but with us as adults, we can go deep. We can go deep and we can think, okay, what are my reasons why I want to do these things? So, that is another piece of your drop that in the comments there, what your why is. And let's move on to our last ring for this episode. Okay, so welcome to the business ring. So we're talking about habits, and I think that something that, like, your business, your passion project, whatever it is that you are passionate about and doing, that is not just your kids in your home, right? And not yourself. I feel like whatever it is, it needs a why. And then you need to have some kind of easier, easier, right? Um, Sort of transition into things and out of things. And I feel like this is something that helps a lot of us. Maybe you need both, maybe only one will make a big difference right away. Um, I know for me, transitioning out can be really hard. Like, I can get into the work frame of mind pretty well, um, unless it's something I really don't want to do. But like I said, then we just kind of we momentum it, right? But switching out of work, like being like, okay, I just finished, but I don't feel like I'm done because I know there's still stuff that needs to be done. But in real life, there's always going to be stuff that needs to be done. So if we think about it from that point of view, like, if there's always going to be stuff, it's kind of like the kitchen is never going to be completely clean because it might be clean for an hour or two, but then the next meal's going to come along and everything's going to be dirty again. So we have to like prepare our brains for, like, okay, there's always going to be work that needs to be done. That's just always going to be how it's going to be. So, how do I let myself say, okay, enough is enough, right? Glennon Glennon Milton has a quote, and I know I'm gonna botch it. I will try to put it like up here on the thing, um, if I can find it, or maybe insert a little clip of it. Okay. But she talks about how, like, every day she quits. Like, every day she wakes up and she cares the most and she gives the most and she does the most. And then at some point, she just quits. She quits and she, like, falls on the couch with her family and her food in a good movie or a book or something. And she's just done for the day because she knows that tomorrow's going to come and she can pick everything back up and start all over again. And that is the frame of mind that, like, I would love to be able to, like, master, is like that, like, there's always going to be tomorrow. You're always going to be able to, and I've done better with it. I mean, you guys have heard me talk all week about how over the holidays I was just like, I thought I was going to create more than I did and I didn't. And it might be midnight on the morning that I'm supposed to be posting this, but okay, it's still going to be up on time, right? So, like, there's ways that we just kind of commit to things and we do things and we find ways to do it, right? But I think sometimes we get into these, like, and hyperfixations can happen, and we can just get hyper fixated on the work that we're doing, and it can make it very difficult for us to, like, get back off the horse because we know that we may not have another one of these on this topic for a while. So we want to, like, run it as far as we can. So I have a couple of tips for you, and then we're gonna, like I said, we're gonna talk about the actual like, building of a transition ritual. So I have a couple tips for you. So one of them is to kind of keep track of, watch how you react and watch your signs. um if you know that you're hyper focusing, if you know you're going to hyper focus that day, like, you can tell, like, some days I just know that, like, I'm going to zone in on this and that's going to be it. Other times it hits me by surprise completely and I have no idea, and yeah. But can you have a schedule flip for that? Okay. So obviously, if you're, like, required to be somewhere, or your presence is required somewhere, then that's not going to be as easy. But if you can, like, if it's during a day when, like, everything is just a normal day and everything's just going normal, do you have a support partner, somebody? Do you have a way of it, like, kind of talking to your kids, explaining to your kids if that's a problem? Like, my kids are a little bit older, so I could probably, if I had, like, food in order and things in order on a, like, okay, mom's going to be hyper focusing on this. You guys need to, figure something else out here for a few hours, right? So I can get this done. Um, I could probably do that and kind of introduce that to them, and then have everything ready so that, I don't feel bad about it, right? And then I can get my hyper focusing in. I can do the thing and I don't feel like I'm, like, stopping short. But if we do this every time we're working, then that's a whole other ball game, right? I want you to love what it is that you're doing. We should all be loving what we're doing. But if we are loving what we are doing so much that it is so difficult for us to do other things with our time, then we really need to, like, try to figure out why. Is there something that we don't like about other things, right? I will tell you, this is like just neuroscience right here. You can have, like, this big thing that you know is going to make such a big difference, but you don't want to do it. And you will find, and you will be cleaning the house, you will be, like, you'll be organizing your books, you'll be doing all kinds of work that you, like, never do because you're just trying to avoid it, but also not look like you're avoiding it. And I feel very much like all of the brain science within this, right? Like, you need cycles. You need a time for this. We need a time for that. We need a time for this. And so if you need to figure out when you work best, you need to, do what you need to do during those times. But also, we need off times. We need down times. We need to be able to shut down. So, this is what I'm going to say. One of the things that I have heard, and I know it's going to help because it just makes my brain like do a sigh of relief just hearing it. Okay. I haven't even done it yet. So it's like the end of the day ritual of like picking up all of your stuff, putting it in a pile, putting it in a drawer if you have one, or, in a folder so you can close it or whatever, and then getting out a piece of paper and writing down like the next couple of steps to where you are at with what you're doing. Because I think a lot of times, and I was just telling my friend this earlier today, where I was like, I don't want to get started on something because if I get started on something and then I have to stop it, then it's going to be difficult for me to know where I'm at. And it's going to take more time for me trying to figure out, like, where like what I have to do next. So if we stop what we're doing, but we write down like a couple of things that we just did and what we have to do next, that gives us a place where we can be like, okay, I know the next couple of like steps. I know the next couple of tasks to do. And then I can move into other things. And so having that be like a ritual, and then, I don't know, like if you lit a candle, blow it out, turn your light off in the area, shut your laptop, do something to signal to your brain like we are done, and then step out of the area, even if you're at the kitchen table and you just step into the kitchen or the living room and like take a deep breath and just like be done. And it's hard. And there's times when, like, especially those of us who work social media, because your social media is on your phone. So for a lot of us, it's very simple for us to go back in and like be working, even when we're sitting on the couch with our family and stuff. So, but you really need to like make it a point to do the things that you love and to enjoy each and every minute of doing it. Because if I'm fully present with my family, I'm enjoying that time. Even though I might have a looming deadline and school might be crazy and this other stuff might be going on, if I am 100% present with my family when I'm with them, they're going to remember it. I'm going to remember it differently. Like everything's going to be different. And it's also, I'm not going to feel bad. I'm not going to feel guilty like I was cheating my family out of my time because, yeah, I was like halfway spending time with you while I'm doing something else. So that is your business ring. What are some of your, are you doing a transition into work where, maybe we're like setting everything up and getting everything going, writing out a to-do list and checking a couple things off? Or are you doing a closing like ritual where it's like, okay, like it's the end of my like work day, so I'm shutting everything down and I'm moving into the next phase of whatever the day is, so that we can, spend our time. And even if you have split shifts, okay, there are some days that I have nighttime calls and I'm going to have to like shut down, but then kind of boot back up, but then shut down right afterwards again. But having those rituals to kind of get me there and then get me back down is going to help with the like back and forth. Because I think, like, again, waiting mode, right? If we know we're supposed to do something and we know it's got like a time to it, it's really difficult for us to do other things during that time because we're afraid we're going to like miss it or something. Another great reason for your alarms on your phone, right? Set your alarms on your phone to go off so that, 15 minutes before it's time to stop working, like you have a reminder so you can start packing stuff up. You can figure out where you're at and find a good stopping point to be like, okay, these are the next like tasks that I need to get done. and then like have all that going. And then if you have to like start back up for something else, you can even before like, and this is one thing that I think I'm going to do just because I think it's going to help me a ton, is get whatever my next thing is ready to go, right? So, whatever my notes are for that meeting, whatever I need to have for that meeting, have everything ready, sitting where you need it, so that when you're transitioning in, you're not like a chicken with your head cut off trying to find your notebook and find your like notes and where's my pen and I need a drink and all these things, right? You can just get your drink, sit down, and do whatever it is you need to do. And then you can transition back out and, be done for the day. So, what is your transition? Are you doing a transition into whatever you're doing or out of whatever you're doing? Let me know, drop it in the comments, and let's wrap this episode up. I am so grateful that you are here today, that you are watching this. We just finished day 4, episode 4. That is so exciting. So, we talked about habits today. We talked about having habits in the kitchen and getting our whole family on board with habits, and our why for deeper habits, and how to transition into or out of work to make that an easier like habit of doing that, so that we aren't like either stuck in not quite work mode or stuck in work mode, right? All right, guys, I appreciate you. I'm so grateful that you are here today. Tune in tomorrow for our last day this week of this show. I'm Kimberly Cox. I'll see you guys tomorrow.